Hey guys, what's going on? Jab here, and in today's video, this is going to be a short one because I want to give you a little reminder of the reason that we are in Bitcoin. From the title, you might know that I'm telling you that this is the first time in the history of humanity that this has ever happened, and if you're in Bitcoin, you need to understand what I'm about to say. I promise you, if you are ever skeptical about Bitcoin, you won't be after this video. I want to make sure that we all understand why Bitcoin is so very powerful. There are two main reasons that I love to tell people why Bitcoin will change the world. Number one, over here, is decentralized and it's built on distributed ledger technology. The trust is democratized and decentralized. We don't need to trust central authorities, but that only really exists to serve the second point in this video. The second point in this video, the second one, and that would be limited supply. I was at a meeting of local business owners yesterday, and I was asked by a local attorney about where they should put their money, their investments, to counteract inflation. They were looking for an inflationary hedge, and by the time in the meeting, she knew that I was in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and I told her, well, it's funny you ask, because that is exactly what Bitcoin was designed to do. Guys, there have only ever been two commodities, two places in the history of civilization that you could put your money for the sole purpose of being inflationary hedges, and that be a wise move. It's not silver, it's not the US dollar, it's not even necessarily real estate, although you could argue that that's a third one. The second one is gold, but the problem with gold is that it has to have physical custody somewhere in a vault. There's a vault in New York with $200 billion worth of gold. Someone could very easily try and rob that. It probably wouldn't work. It'd probably turn into Ocean's 31 or whatever movie they're on now. But the point is, you have to take physical custody and delivery of gold, and that poses a big problem. The other problem is, traditionally, it's going to be held by large banks and by governments. You're not going to be holding gold. You're going to be holding a certificate of gold, which isn't much better than just holding the dollar. The dollar is backed by the good name of the U.S. government. Gold is backed by physical gold. There's a lot of problems with holding gold, but those actually aren't the biggest problem with gold. The biggest problem with gold is that it's still subject to inflation, and people don't pay attention to this. The US dollar traditionally inflates about 2% every year. Well, the gold supply goes up about 2% every year because more gold is mined. So you're not necessarily actually counteracting inflation by being in gold. And that leaves one thing left to counteract inflation. Real estate, you can make that argument. I wouldn't. I think it's a bad idea unless you're buying in cash. A bad idea specifically to buy it for the purposes of counteracting inflation, that is. You have gold, which we just talked about, and then you have Bitcoin. You see, Bitcoin is decentralized. Bitcoin is based on distributed ledger technology, all of which you need to have a strong understanding of. If you don't already, I would encourage you to make sure you study up on that. But Bitcoin has all of those functionalities to secure the fact that you can't have someone come in and try and print more Bitcoin. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin created. In fact, a study recently came out that over 4 million Bitcoin has already been lost. That more than likely means, I don't know the exact data, but it more than likely means that more Bitcoin is being lost every 10 minutes than is being created every 10 minutes, especially in light of the halving we had earlier this year. But why is that important? Why is it important that Bitcoin has a limited supply? Why do I say that that is literally the most important aspect of Bitcoin? Let me explain. People ask why Bitcoin has value all the time. And for a couple of years, I was a little stumped by the question. I was like, well, what do you mean, why does it have value? It has value because people say it has value. That's why anything has value. But I have a better answer for that now, a better way of explaining that to someone who doesn't already find themselves in the cryptocurrency space like I do. So if you're ever asked that question, here's your answer. Number one is decentralized. But remember, number one, decentralization is used to support number two, which is a limited supply. So the reason that limited supply is so very important is because it protects the value of anyone in Bitcoin. The US dollar has lost 98% of its value over the last 100 years, and that means anyone holding the US dollar, holding a ton of cash, is losing money, hemorrhaging 2% every single year on the tides of inflation. And it also means since inflation is happening at 2%, there's absolutely no solid mechanism to stop that from being 20, 200, 2,000% in a year rather than just 2%. We've seen it happen in recent memory in Venezuela. Adopting an inflationary economic model the way that just about every country on the planet has by now is extremely dangerous because eventually that inflation can get out of hand when governments decide that the spending they need to do in the next 12 months is more important than the sovereignty and the salability of their currency. And unfortunately, that's exactly what we're seeing happen this year. Through the CARES Act and several other acts passed through by the U.S. federal government, there has been a lot of money printing. People get on to me when I say money printing. The creation of government-backed bonds injects liquidity into the market. It injects, not liquidity, it injects supply into the market. And the number of dollars in circulation has gone up dramatically. $10 trillion, in fact. That devalues all of our dollars. And it's going to take a little while for it to catch up. These things do not move quickly. But over the next couple of years, you will notice inflation in your dollar. You will notice the price of gas and milk going up, and you will have to deal with that. But the people that are in Bitcoin will be like a boat rising with the tides, rather than someone anchored to a piece of land drowning while the tide rises. Make no mistake when I say that just about every time in the history of the world that a government has adopted a fiat currency, it has led to the downfall of said government and nation, because eventually something like COVID is going to happen, and inevitably the government gets short-sighted saying, let's print money so we can get ourselves out of this situation. It happened in World War I, happened in World War II, it happened during 2008, and it's happening now. And in doing so, you weaken the future value of the dollar. You borrow from future prosperity to put a band-aid on today instead of letting the crisis happen and heal naturally. And by the way, I can hear you typing in the comments right now, Jeb. Yeah, that's just the US dollar though. Ha! I live in Tasmania. What does that have to do with me? Well, unfortunately, my friend, every other currency on the planet, more or less, is backed by the US dollar, which means whatever happens to the US dollar happens to the rest of your currencies. You would be wise to follow what is going on with our currency right now, and it's very dangerous. And the one place that you will find safety is not in stocks. You will find it in Bitcoin, and you will find it in gold to a certain extent, but you will mostly find it in Bitcoin. Anyway, guys, I thought that was important enough that we should make a dedicated video on it. On these Saturday videos, we might start a little series here going over some of the most basic principles in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency like we just did, so that the noobs here in cryptocurrency have a place to go so that they can learn why Bitcoin is doing so well, why so many people preach about it, and why it is indeed the future. Tell me in the comment section down below if you would like to see a series like that. I am more than happy to do it. It works well for these weekend videos. Anyway, guys, that is going to wrap it out for today's video. Before I go, though, I do just first want to thank each and every single last one of you for watching, as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.